I remember you told me about the early days of X Prize and how you would finance it. Like, that's a great story.
So originally, when the people don't believe the X Prize came to me as I was reading a book called The Spirit of St. Louis. Lindberg wrote this book in 1955 that talked about his flight across the Atlantic, and I had no idea that Lindberg actually crossed the Atlantic to win a prize. I thought he woke up one day and he just decided, go east, young man. But there was a $25,000 prize put up by this Frenchman, Raymond Ortegue, who wanted to inspire travel between his homeland of Paris and his newfound home of New York. And as I'm reading the book, I'm taking notes in the margins, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm adding it up, $400,000 spent to win this $25,000 prize. And I said, how insanely leveraged is that? 16 times the prize money. And this guy didn't spend a penny to back any of the guys most likely to win. Admiral Byrd, who was first person to fly to the North Pole, the most likely player to win, had packed large plates of china in the back of his airplane to celebrate when he landed in Paris. Now, like, they wouldn't have china plates in Paris, but he crashes on takeoff, and he spent $100,000 to try and win this prize. And Lindberg, the most unlikely guy, in fact, the day before he took off from New York, the New York Times on May 19th, 1927, wrote this editorial that said, stop! Don't do this thing. You're going to crash and set back aviation a decade. Well, of course, just the opposite happened. Lindbergh makes the trip. He's called the Flying Fool. He goes from being the Flying Fool to a global hero whose name most school kids still know today. And in 33 and a half hours later, he lands in Paris. Within 18 months of his trip, the number of passengers in the United States increased 30-fold. The number of airplanes quadrupled, the number of pilots tripled. This huge aviation, because it was a paradigm change. Oh, if he can do it, I can do it. And so that formative moment, I said, that's what we need. Because I had, at this point, again, given up on on going the government route. I said, I need something to spark these private companies. And so the X Prize, originally, the letter X was going to be the name of the person who put up the money. It just took me so long to find that person. The X stuck around.
Yep.
So I couldn't, to get to your story on leverage, I went and I pitched, from Fred Smith to Richard Branson to, hundreds of CEOs and CMOs on this vision of this highly leveraged incentive prize. And everybody was like, this is a crazy idea. It'll never work. Someone's going to die. Why isn't NASA doing this? And everyone said, no. Okay?
How many people did you talk to?
Hundreds of people, literally. It was, because at this point, we announced it under the arch in St. Louis.
What year is that?
This is May 18th of 1996. I had this concept called this line of super credibility. There's this line of credibility. If you announce something above the line of credibility, it might happen, or people might believe it or not, depending on what you do. There's a line of super credibility. If you announce something above the line of super credibility, no matter what you do, people believe it, and their belief makes it happen in some sense. So I had not one astronaut, I had 20 astronauts on stage. I had the head of NASA, the head of the FAA, Lindbergh family, Burt Rutan, and I'm announcing this $10 million prize. No one asked, do you have the money? We did not. Unfortunately. Do you have any teams competing? We did not. And so we started having teams register, and I'm feeling more and more on the hook to raise this $10 million prize, because it's like, Peter, we're going to be getting there. Do you have the money yet? Well, I will. I promise you, I will. So, insane pressure is the mother of invention, not insanity. Well, this was insane pressure. And I ended up being able to raise a small amount of capital from donors in St. Louis. And a friend of mine said, have you heard about a whole-one insurance policy? I said, what is that? And I said, well, you take a bet and you pay a premium, and if someone accomplishes the task, they pay off the prize. If they don't, they keep the premium.
They meaning the
insurance company. So we put an end date on the X Prize of January 1, 2005.
So you take a bet with an insurance company.
So we bet.
How did you approach them and just, hey, I'm going to...
So I went through Aon as a broker, who went to the space insurance underwriters, who have a certain amount of capacity, traditionally insuring launches and satellites. And they play in the very traditional world. And the insurance underwriters went and said to Boeing, "You're going to compete? No. Lockheed? No. Northrop Grumman? No. No one's going to win this thing. It's ridiculous." So they took the bet. And it's not publicly disclosed how much it is, but it was in the single-digit low millions. But I didn't have $3 million to pay the insurance premium. But I thought I could raise it. So I wrote a policy where I would pay $50,000 every month with a large balloon payment at the end. So I would be paying in $50,000, the last Friday of every month, and I'd have this $50,000 Friday coming.
And how did you finance that?
Begging. Well-worn knee pad. I became very impassioned in fundraising. Our friend Adeo and many of our common friends from Elon, and basically going out to folks and saying, "Here's the vision," and I would literally finance this thing $50,000 at a time. Because if I didn't pay the $50,000, all the money I'd paid in beforehand would have been evaporated and the thing would be over. They'd keep it. So I read about one day, I had this large, balloon payment coming along. I read about this woman, Anusha Ansari, born in Persia, came here in high school, became a serial entrepreneur. Her and her husband started a company called Telecom Technologies. They sold to Sonos Networks for $1 billion. And in her bio, it says, "And her dream is to fly on a suborbital flight into space." And I read that thing like 4 or 5 times. On a suborbital flight into space. And I committed in that moment in time to track her down, and I did. And I was her first meeting when she came back vacationing from Hawaii after selling her company. And we named it the Ansari X Prize because they put up the money to pay off the rest. And it was so successful. We've taken the X Prize now and turned it into a incentive prize organization, and we're launching a series of X Prizes in different areas.